Introduction. Have you ever stopped to consider the story you're living? Not just the events and circumstances, but the narrative you've been telling yourself about who you are and what you're capable of. How many of us, unconsciously, live out a story that was never truly ours to begin with? A story crafted from our past, molded by the voices of others, and shaped by the expectations placed upon us. What if the life you're living isn't the life you were meant to create? What if you've been playing the role of a victim in your own story, believing that things happen to you rather than for you? The truth is, many of us unknowingly live as victims of our own narrative, trapped in limiting beliefs and patterns that keep us from realizing our full potential. But what if you could change that story? What if you could stop being a victim of your past and become the hero of your own journey? You can. The first step is realizing that the story you've been living doesn't define you. You hold the pen. Your past doesn't have to dictate your future. 1. The story we tell ourselves. The story you tell yourself is more than just a set of memories or events. It is the lens through which you perceive the world and interpret your place in it. Every day, you unconsciously reinforce this narrative, which shapes your decisions, your emotions, and even your relationships. But how much of that story is really yours? And how much has been written for you by others, by society, family, or past experiences? We are not born with a fixed identity. We build it as we go, often from external influences and emotional conditioning. When we are young, we absorb the beliefs of our caregivers, teachers, and peers. And over time, these beliefs form the foundation of our personal story. Some of these stories empower us, while others limit us, creating an identity based on I am not good enough, I am not deserving of success, or I will never be happy. But what if those stories aren't truths? What if you have been living in a narrative that was never meant for you? These beliefs might have been formed in moments of vulnerability, perhaps as a coping mechanism or a survival tactic when you were unable to process certain experiences. And yet, years later, those stories still dictate your life, keeping you stuck in the same patterns of fear, doubt, and limitation. The key to transformation is realizing that these stories can be they don't define you, and you don't have to live by them anymore. The process begins with recognizing how these unconscious narratives shape your present reality and how choosing to change the story allows you to take control of your life and align with your true self. 2. The effect of the victim identity. When we look at our lives through the lens of the victim, we often find ourselves feeling powerless, stuck, or at the mercy of life's circumstances. This identity of victimhood is subtle, insidious, and often unconscious. It's not always about grand external tragedies, but can stem from the everyday challenges that we feel we cannot overcome. It is the belief that things happen to us rather than for us. We begin to see ourselves as passive participants in our own lives, unable to change or influence the outcomes of our circumstances. The victim identity doesn't always show up as outright despair. Sometimes it's just a nagging sense that we're never quite in control of our lives, that things are always beyond our reach, or that we are continually reacting to the world around us. We believe that we are not the creators of our story, but rather the victims of it. This mindset locks us into patterns of helplessness, where we stop looking for solutions because we've already decided that they don't exist. When we identify with being a victim, we relinquish responsibility for our lives, believing that the course of our journey is dictated by external forces rather than our own choices. This belief holds us back from growth, from taking risks, from stepping into the unknown. The victim mentality is an illusion, a defense mechanism against fear and uncertainty, but it's a defense that keeps us small, stuck in a cycle of passivity and self-doubt. The truth is that When we shed this identity, we reclaim our power. We become the heroes of our own lives, capable of navigating even the most challenging circumstances with courage and resilience. The key is to recognize that the victim story is just a story. It's time to take the pen back and start writing a new narrative. 3. How the victim narrative prevents our growth. The victim narrative creates a psychological prison, one that keeps us locked in old patterns and beliefs, preventing us from growing into our true potential. When we see ourselves as victims, we are not just reacting to life, we are passively accepting a role that does not serve our evolution. This self-imposed limitation shapes how we approach challenges, relationships, and opportunities. Every difficulty becomes something done to us, and this mindset keeps us from seeing them as opportunities for growth. The most insidious part of the victim narrative is that it limits the capacity for change. When we believe that our circumstances define us, we stop looking for ways to improve or evolve. The more we cling to this narrative, the less we take action, and the more we spiral into a state of stagnation. We stop asking the most powerful question: how can I transform this? Instead, we resign ourselves to the belief that things will never change. But growth, true personal growth, only happens when we take full responsibility for our lives, when we accept that we are the creators of our circumstances and our future. When we shift from victimhood to ownership, we stop seeing obstacles as insurmountable, and instead, we begin to recognize them as opportunities to learn, to evolve, and to transform. The real cost of holding on to the victim narrative is that it keeps us in a state of psychological paralysis. We become stuck in the past, afraid to face the future because we believe it will be the same. The victim mindset keeps us in a state of fear, making us believe we have no control. However, the moment we step out of the victim role and take full responsibility, the world opens up to us. Transformation is not just possible, it is inevitable when we choose to stop being a victim. 4. Rewriting your story. The power of self-overcoming. To truly break free from the victim narrative, we must embrace the power of self-overcoming. The ability to rewrite your story is perhaps the most empowering tool you possess. You are not defined by your past, your mistakes, or your failures. These are simply chapters in a book that you now have the power to edit, to transform, and to ultimately release. It is only when we begin to understand this that we realize we can shape the future based on the choices we make today. The process of rewriting your story begins with awareness, recognizing the false narrative that you've lived under for so long. Whether it's the belief that you're destined for failure or that you're not deserving of success. These beliefs are just that, beliefs, not facts. Your story is not fixed. It's fluid. It can change with a shift in perspective and a willingness to challenge the beliefs that have kept you stagnant. To rewrite your story, you must take responsibility for the script you've been living. This is not about blaming yourself for past mistakes, but about recognizing that you hold the pen now. This process requires you to shift your mindset, to stop seeing yourself as a passive participant and start taking active control of your journey. Every day offers a new page in your life's story, and with every decision, you choose whether the next chapter is one of growth, freedom, and empowerment, or one that keeps you locked in the same cycle. Self-overcoming is about stepping into your authentic self. It's the courage to look at your past, accept it, and choose to move forward as a person who knows their worth, their power, and their ability to create the life they desire. This process can be difficult, but it's also incredibly freeing. Once you take ownership of your story, you become the author, and the possibilities for your future are endless. 5. The importance of forgiveness and acceptance. One of the most profound steps in rewriting your story is learning the power of forgiveness and acceptance. These two forces are essential in breaking free from the victim narrative, allowing you to release the emotional baggage that holds you back from growth and healing. The truth is, forgiveness isn't about excusing the hurt or forgetting the pain. It's about freeing yourself from the grip of those negative emotions so they no longer control your life. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. It's seen as an act of kindness toward others, but in reality, it's a gift you give yourself. When we hold on to anger, resentment, or bitterness, we keep ourselves tethered to the past. These emotions keep the victim story alive, preventing us from moving forward. Forgiveness, then, is not for the other person, but for our own emotional freedom. It allows us to let go of the story we've been telling ourselves about the wrongs done to us and to make space for healing and renewal. Acceptance is equally powerful. Many of us spend years fighting against our past, our mistakes, and even the circumstances that led us to this point. But in doing so, we waste precious energy. Acceptance is not about condoning the past, it's about recognizing the lessons it brought and allowing ourselves to move on. It's about understanding that the past does not define us, but it can shape us if we choose to learn from it. When we forgive and accept ourselves along with the people who have hurt us, we create the emotional space needed to break free from the victim identity. It is in this space that we can begin to create new narratives, ones filled with empowerment, growth, and transformation. You cannot rewrite your story if you're still holding on to the pain of the past. Forgiveness and acceptance are keys to unlocking your potential and opening the door to your future. Says, the final awakening. Embracing your true self. The final stage of transformation comes when you realize something deeply empowering. You are not defined by the past, nor by the limiting stories you've been telling yourself. The process of awakening is not about reaching some final destination. It is an ongoing journey of self-discovery, growth, and continual redefinition of who you are. And in this moment of final awakening, you step into the profound realization that the story you've been living doesn't have to be your future. True awakening comes when you stop living according to someone else's script, when you stop playing the role of the victim, and when you take ownership of the person you are becoming. This is the moment when you embrace the entirety of who you are: the light, the dark, the beautiful imperfections, and the unique traits that make you authentically yourself. This stage is often marked by a deep sense of peace and empowerment. It's the realization that no matter what has happened in the past, you have always had the ability to reshape your life and your identity. You begin to understand that you are not a passive bystander in your own life, but rather the author of your experience. You are in charge of the narrative. You get to decide who you are, who you want to become, and how you show up in the world. When you embrace your true self, the struggle to become someone else fades away. You stop seeking validation, approval, or permission from others, and instead, you turn inward to find the strength and wisdom that has always been there. It is through embracing your true self that you unlock your deepest potential, and in doing so, you finally break free from the victim story that once defined you. Awakening is a powerful process, but it's not always easy. It demands courage, vulnerability, and the willingness to face discomfort. But in the end, the awakening of your true self is the greatest freedom you can experience. You stop living for others and begin to live for you in alignment with your soul's deepest desires and purpose.